I first saw BigIris back in January at the Gigabit Challenge, because Kansas City started to think about ways entrepreneurs could use a gigabit, Google Fiber's gigabit. And so this is one of the companies that presented, and they've come a long way. And so it's my pleasure to introduce Don Peterson. BigIris uses advanced analytics to do data mining, and I guess that's about as much as I know. And Don has a 6 minutes now to tell you all about it.
Thanks, Nate. So, given 6 minutes, I'll jump right into it. BigIris is a Kansas corporation. Our mission is to deliver interesting insights and actionable knowledge to an industry that has long suffered from a lack of that sort of thing. And I'm going to show you some examples of that in a minute. But I want to first talk about big data. Big data hit the sort of radar about a year ago when McKinsey Global Institute published this report, and the QR code, if you can read it from there, will take you to the link that will get you that report in a PDF form. And you can see for yourself what they're talking about. But a big part of that report had to do with healthcare. And in it they said that if big data were applied to healthcare, that the industry could save almost 8% a year, or in real dollars of the $2.5 trillion we spend, in the neighborhood of $300 billion a year. That's a lot of money. In anybody's world, that's a lot of money. And inside that report, they dove a little deeper and said that much of what happens in healthcare in our system is way overspent. We spend way more than any other society, and I'll give you an example of that. We spend as a society in the U.S. about $8,000 per year per patient. And we have a life expectancy that's just barely 72, 73-ish. In Japan, they spend a third of what we spend, a third. And their life expectancy is nearly 10% greater than ours in this country. And you have to ask yourself, why is that? And if there was a better system out there, like we did in the automobile industry, we went over and mimicked what they were doing in Japan with the automobile industry, it would seem to me that you wouldn't need to really come up with some crazy science or rocket science to figure out how to fix healthcare. Just go model whatever the Japanese are doing. Let's go do that. Because if we can deliver better, more effective, better outcomes healthcare for a third the price, I'm in. Well, I don't care who's paying for it, whether it's government paying for it, who the single payer, the insurance companies, and all the other things that we debate every day about how this should be done. There is a model out there that we should be modeling, and we're not. Anyway, but part of the problem is the judgment-based nature of physician care. Doctors don't have experiential data to draw from, except their own. They have journal reports, wonderful reports that are created. They take about 18 months to publish. They do clinical trials of all kinds of things, and you can go to clinicaltrial.gov. It's a great site. Lists all the clinical trials going on in the world. Did you know that in half of clinical trials that are performed in this country, paid for by the NIH or CDC, only half of them ever publish the results? 50% are never published? How's that work? So anyway, so this is what we do. We take data from any data source within the healthcare industry. Now, imaging is cool because imaging is 20% of the $2.5 trillion we spend. $500 billion a year to deliver imaging services to all of us, and they're really just for diagnostic purposes. Revenue cycle management, the money, where does it come from? Claims data, all of the interesting bits and pieces of that, and I'm going to show you something here in a second. The administrative side of things. Healthcare as a service is delivery. It's logistics. It's like anything else where you start here and you end there and all the things in between that help it get there. And then there, of course, is the clinical data. Diagnoses, pathologies, indication codes, symptoms, and all those things. We transform that information into something we can then load into what this big data stuff is called, and the underlying technology is called Hadoop. First, we have to sanitize it. We have to take the personally identifiable information out of it because, and everybody's always scared of that. Oh, HIPAA, 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 right? Frankly, for statistical analysis, We don't care who you are. It doesn't matter who you are. We don't even want to know who you are. In fact, we sanitize it before we put it in the Hadoop because we don't care who you are. We're talking about calculations, aggregations, distribution, statistical analysis. One data point doesn't matter. They matter only as a set. We load it into the algorithms that provide the clinical insights, the data visualization tools that then people can use. And I'm going to show you something. So in the past, I used to run a healthcare practice. I was a consultant. I did it for part-time, and they paid me money to do it. This book, a couple pounds, is 1 month's financial report for a 3-doctor practice. And all this is May of 2012, so this is pretty recent. This isn't something I pulled off the shelf from 2007. And it has all this stuff, and who has time to go through this and tell you what's really going on? Nobody. So that's what BigIris does. We distill this into the kinds of things people can see, trends, bar charts, even this. We talk about advanced analytics. Nate said advanced. They don't have to be advanced. They can be very simple. Just a bar chart. Show me what we did this year, last year, this quarter, last quarter, so I can know how my business is doing. But with these kinds of reports, how would I ever go back over last year and see how we were doing last year compared to this May, this June? So here's our team. Myself, Bruce Cameron. Bruce is an international IT executive and network engineer. Leo's here with me here. The doctors, Ed Neiman and David Varan, have been tremendous help to us, giving us insights as to what kinds of things doctors and others would want to know. Here's where we are as a company. We've self-funded it. I myself funded it. We're about 3 bullet points into this thing. We're in the 3rd bullet point, developing the analytics and the visualization. We have our first customer out in New York, and he's working closely with us for a pilot. We just met with IBM 2 weeks ago, and we're developing a partnership with them because they're doing some things in healthcare analytics themselves, you can imagine, with Watson, actually. And then we intend to go look for money late this quarter when all the people with money are back from Aspen, right? Is that where they are? They're in Aspen. So they're in Aspen. Yeah. At their condo in Aspen. So anyway, there's a lot more data I can show you, what our benefits are and things like that. But since I'm out of time, I will open it up to questions and see what you guys want to know. But these are the kind of things we can show people. And it's simple stuff. This is just a calculation of list of things. So there's no science in this. I mean, there's no, I don't need a math scientist to figure this out. We're just counting. But we're showing it in a way that people can understand, as opposed to this. All this data, all that data is in here. But this is just 1 month's worth. Yes, please.
So you would provide data analysis for a medical practice, not for a patient's health history, right?
We can do it on any medical data. So I've had CBiz, somebody from CBiz asked me when I spoke at the Sparking Innovation thing a few weeks ago, if we could do this with medical claims data. Well, yeah, of course we could. You could do a lot of things with medical claims data, looking for fraud, looking for propensities between physicians. Physicians will order a particular diagnostic exam, and they'll all use different symptoms and different ICD-9. There's all codes for all this stuff if you know the industry at all. And, knowing what symptoms they're indicating before they do a procedure, it'd be interesting to know the differences between physicians, right? Everybody says, well, gee, I went to Dr. So-and-so, and he said this. Oh, my doctor said never do that. Really? As a consumer, when I go to the doctor, I kind of want to think that the doctor's going to tell me, one doctor's going to tell me more or less the same thing another doctor's going to tell me, right? You don't want to go over there and go, well, you mean he didn't do that? He didn't run this test? He didn't draw your blood? That's frightening to as a consumer, right? We want McDonald's-like healthcare. We want everybody to be reasonably consistent. But because these doctors operate with nobody standing over their shoulder, like the rest of us in life, every job we've had, there's always somebody we got to report to. These guys are there, and they're cutting you open, and they make all the decisions more or less on their own right there in the moment. So part of what we want to develop is data about patients, about the frequency and distribution of disease, symptoms, and things like that.
Don, could you elaborate a little bit on your customer segments and which ones you tend to focus on first and why?
Yeah, there's, this is what I was saying to Nate. The hard part for us is staying focused on a specific sort of silo within this vast healthcare realm. And what we tried to stay with was health imaging, because imaging has been digitized for a longer period of time. So there's years and years of medical imaging data. We can literally take like an echocardiogram, an ultrasound of the heart, without seasoning it with any other data from any other data source. We can simply analyze those studies by themselves and tell imaging administrators, those in the radiology department, what the frequency and distribution is, or how well utilized their people and their equipment and all these other assets that they have in place that they're paying for, and how they're utilizing those things, how they're utilizing the technicians and the reading physicians, and how quickly are they returning the diagnosis to the facility who ordered the imaging. So we're trying to stay focused on imaging, but there's points of pain all across the board, and it's hard. The way we got involved with IBM, I was at a conference in New York about a month and a half ago, and they put up a slide. The IBM person put up a slide, the lady who was giving the presentation on big data, and she showed a slide where they said they're taking images coming in from the field in rural Asia and comparing them to a database they have of 1,000 images. 1,000? Really, 1,000? I've got 20,000. They've got 1,000. So I went up to the lady after the presentation. I said, I don't know if you'd be interested in working with an early stage company like ours, but we could multiply your database of imaging by 20 to 50 times overnight, and now your diagnosis, your comparative analysis is going to be more accurate than it would have been before when you only had 1,000. IBM only has 1,000? And she said, well, where do you get them? Well, if you sanitize them properly, once you've de-identified medical data, there are no rules. Seriously, there are no rules. Your HIPAA information has been removed. Somebody once asked me, well, what if I don't want to participate in that? Then I would say, well, then come and get your data. Well, how am I going to know which is mine? Well, that's the point. If you can't tell which is yours, then who does it belong to? It's sanitized. It's been de-identified. Now it's just, in the aggregate, valuable information. So, we have this ethical dilemma whether we tell facilities we're using that data to do these things or whether we ask them to volunteer and hear all the reasons why they shouldn't. Thad, what?
I was going to say, you have different segments of kind of what your platform is able to do. Where do you see the most value add for you guys, right? So you've got the data capture piece, you've got the data presentation, right? So you kind of package it up in a nice way. And then you have decision making, right? Which probably adds the most value. If I take a look at some of this data, like if I'm a doctor, right, so great, I've got it in the book, and I say almost 30% of my patients have hypertension, right?
Yeah,
right. Well, so what, right? So what do I do with that? So what do you have portions of the platform that also kind of help them make that leap or start suggesting decision making? So just a more general question of where's your value add?
Yeah, our value add, obviously, the biggest challenge for us development-wise was to collect the data and sanitize it, parsing it, because we're dealing with text files, XML, CSVs, any data type. So they're dumping DB files to us and all this stuff. So first we have to figure out how to parse that and then sanitize it. So there's voodoo in that. Loading it into Hadoop is easy. That's pretty straightforward. There's tools for that, and the industry has sort of really hardened the enterprise class tools for doing that. And then we have to calculate, and we have to do statistics, and we have to do the analysis. And that's where Leo and some of the other people we're working with on the math science and data science side of this. And those algorithms, they have to vary depending on what we're trying to show. If we simply want to show lists like this is easy. We can do this with Tableau or, to some extent, even Excel. But when we're talking about probabilities and predictive kinds of things, so we get into the clinical predictive. If 30% of my patients have hypertension, what do I do? I'll give you an example. The industry in the U.S. does 20 million echocardiograms a year, those ultrasounds of the heart, 20 million of them. And those that come from primary care, your doctors, your family physicians, 8 out of 10 are entirely unremarkable. 80% of the ones we do in that realm of healthcare are unremarkable. What's interesting, though, is the other two, the two that were remarkable, they got the same pharmacotherapy that the other 8 got. Why? Because they had hypertension. So you give them a calcium channel blocker, beta blocker, whatever they take for their hypertension. Oh, and they probably have some atherosclerosis, which you could see in an echocardiogram, but if they've had high cholesterol most of their lives, and they're now in their 50s like me, trust me, they have atherosclerosis. So if they have high cholesterol, you put them on a statin. So could you deduce from the data that there's no reason to do 20 million echocardiograms every year to confirm what you already know? They have hypertension and they have hyperlipidemia. Let's give them the damn drugs. Move on. So Medicare, the second highest paid CPT code in terms of behind office visit is echocardiograms. $7 billion a year Medicare spends on echoes, where 8 out of 10 are normal, and 10 out of 10, half of 1% go on to cardiology. The rest, pharmacotherapy. So yes, that's real value there. Getting doctors to respond to that, that's tough. So the administrative side of things, that is where we focus, because administrators will pay for the information we give them.